Welcome to BaseballGuys.com. I'm your host, Ray Flowers. Jose Reyes had his new news in his name today, or his name in his news, depending upon how you want to look at it. He was talked about, let's just put it that way. Turns out that he's okay. There was a lot of concern that he was being pulled out of the lineup today. There might be something wrong with his wheel. He's had obviously all the concerns with the hamstring. Not an issue. Apparently he had to go to the doctor, had to get some test results taken care of. Should be back in the lineup tomorrow. Good to go. Everyone at Momentum is very positive that health-wise Reyes should be okay. I'm a little less secure in that position at the moment, but the good news is he didn't have a setback. He really did have to go to the doctor for some testing, and he should return to the lineup shortly. David Aardsma, not quite as good news with him. He's got a little bit of a minor groin issue. Nothing severe, nothing that's going to knock him out for weeks, but it's something to keep an eye on in Seattle. Now, there's a couple issues. Firstly, Aardsma, who almost had 40 saves last year out of nowhere for the Mariners, really isn't that good of a pitcher. I know this stuff is good, over 10 strikeouts per 9 innings, but there are a lot of concerns. Chiefly among those, the inability to throw strikes. He walked well over 4 batters per 9 innings last year, leading to a barely better than average strikeout to walk ratio. And secondarily, he is an extreme fly ball pitcher. Obviously, it helps to pitch in Seattle given that fact. But last year, 53.9% of all the batted balls off him went in the sky, yet somehow he allowed 4 home runs and 71 in the 3rd innings. That's impossible to expect a repeat of. In fact, his home run to fly ball ratio actually was cut in half last year from his career rate. When that number regresses, his performance will suffer. Whether or not that'll be enough to knock him out of the 9th inning role remains to be seen. But the Mariners did solidify their bullpen a bit by picking up Brandon League in the Brendan Morrow deal with the Blue Jays. And though League's numbers weren't great, you see a power arm there with a power sinker. He keeps the ball on the ground. He could be a very successful closer if the team needs him to step up in Aardsma's stead. Hank Blalock's in the news because he's still a free agent. The Marlins and the Rays apparently are the two teams heaviest in his corner, pursuing him, trying to offer him a deal to be a part-time player, a left-handed bat off the bench. Neither club, either the Marlins or the Rays, has an opening in the everyday lineup. That's probably why Blalock is hesitating, trying to decide which of these two teams, will allow him to have a bigger role, and then therefore allow him to get a contract hopefully next season. Looks like he's probably going to have to sign a short-term, 1-year deal, and hopefully, have a good year, and then hit it big in 2011. Ike Davis with the Mets. Little bit of an issue with him in the Mets. Apparently, he's got a locker that has something to the effect of first baseman of the future on his nameplate. There's nothing wrong with that. Everyone knows Ike Davis is the first baseman of the future for the Mets. But what does that do to a guy like Daniel Murphy, who's supposed to be the first baseman of 2010 for the Mets? I don't know if it's going to cause any discord. It probably won't. But it does show the fact that the Mets, at least long-term, aren't looking for Murphy to stay in that first base role. Now, Davis hit a grand slam today, had a couple of walks, has looked really strong in camp so far. However, he's going to have a massive spring to make the ball club. I still expect Murphy to open the year as a starter at first base. Depending on how he does, we might see Ike Davis early in the year, we might see him at the middle of the year, we might see him at the end of the season, but long-term, he is the Mets' option at first base. Max Scherzer had a rough outing. He lasted a couple of innings, gave up 3 runs, 6 hits. He should be fine. This was his debut with the Tigers. Maybe there was a little bit of nervousness, maybe just a little bit of an issue with the weather. There were some high winds when he was pitching. Scherzer has a dynamite arm. It's dynamic, actually. Huge strikeout totals. The issue with him isn't can he be successful. The issue with him is can he throw strikes, which happens to a lot of hard throwers. And secondarily, can that max effort that he has, if you watch his motion, it's very high energy. Can he sustain that over the course of 200 innings in a season? Diamondbacks were convinced that he could do that, so that's where they moved him to the Tigers in the Edwin Jackson deal. Look for Scherzer to be a strong strikeout option, and if he can prove that he can keep that motion going for 180 plus innings, he's got a great chance to be a dynamic starter in the fantasy game in 2010. Brandon Webb's the last guy I'm going to touch on today. Nothing wrong with Brandon Webb in particular, other than the fact he feels like he's kind of plateaued, that he's kind of stagnated in his recovery from his shoulder issue. Hasn't had any setbacks. He's got up to 45 pitches in the bullpen the other day. Hopes to return to game action in a couple weeks. Hopes to face live hitters next week for the first time. But he's a little frustrated with his recovery. Again, feeling that he's kind of plateaued out. This is not an uncommon occurrence for players coming back from surgeries, especially shoulder surgery. Much more difficult to return from that than the elbow surgery that we're used to seeing. Again, I'm still really nervous about Webb. I know his ADP is rising. People are starting to draft him very highly in fantasy leagues. I'm still concerned. I'd still like to see him, obviously work through this issue here and get some game action under his belt before I'm ready to even remotely consider adding Webb to my roster. People will go for it because of that track record of excellence. I'd exercise a little bit of caution if I was you. Again, I'm Ray Flowers, BaseballGuys.com. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll talk to y'all again soon.